All right, hey, one of our favorites back on the show, Nate Edwards, Rock M Nation. Nate, how you been, brother?
I'm doing great. Missouri basketball's doing well. I don't know a thing about it, but since we don't have spring games, I got to do something. So yeah, I'm doing great. How you been, SEC Mike?
Oh, we're doing well, especially since, Mizzou Nation has really embraced us, particularly Cousin Shane. I think he's the favorite, nearly every Missouri fan. If you asked him, who is their favorite person from the state of Tennessee? I would think 9 out of 10 is probably going to say Cousin Shane.
Yeah, I think he's up there. Now that's a low bar to clear, but let's give him credit. He cleared it. He cleared it very, very well. So credit to Cousin Shane.
Yeah, and speaking of Cousin Shane, so this entire interview, I want to focus on the upcoming season for the most part. But this one question, he was up there. He made the trek to Columbia for the Oklahoma game. Just how sweet was that after, seemingly a year of like an online war between Missouri and Oklahoma fans, and just how wild that game was back and forth. I thought Oklahoma was going to win it. I think we all thought that and then of course we know what really happened.
Yeah. So Oklahoma and Missouri have been barking at each other on the recruiting trail for quite some time. Oklahoma has set up camp in the Lee Summit area, which is in Kansas City. They have plucked a lot of good players from there. Now it helps that the Lee Summit coach is a former Oklahoma player. But you saw a lot of highly ranked kids from Kansas City go to Oklahoma, and Missouri fans like, what the heck is going on? So when the wheel turns and Missouri starts getting some recruits and Oklahoma starts complaining, like it's a fun rivalry. And we weren't playing anymore. We haven't played since 2012. So that's kind of all we had. And you got to realize I'm from the Big 8 years. So like to see, I was on the field, I was talking to some recruits and I saw the crimson and cream uniforms just run out on the field with that white, with that clear, and like, it took me back. I felt like a little kid watching a Big 8 football game again. I was like mad and I wanted to hate them, but I was also so happy to see them back on Faroe. It was a great game too. Like you said, it was back and forth. Probably not the best played game of the year, but like very competitive. Obviously the good guys won in the end. And of course, Eli Drinkwitz had some shots for Bob Stoops.
It'll be real disappointing to Bob Stoops, but OU doesn't always whip Missouri's ass anymore. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
For all the complaints that Oklahoma and Texas made about Missouri leaving the SEC and basically calling them sluts, I was really happy to see them come back and just play the football game. Quit talking, quit hanging each other on the online stuff, quit barking about recruiting. Let's just play some football. And it was really nice to see that. And I know we're not going to get them every single year, but I'm really glad that rivalry is back because it's so much fun to hate them.
Right. Yeah. I think the way I described that game, Nate, was it may have been the worst 57 minutes and then the best 3 minutes of last season in the SEC. But, hey, well, speaking of the upcoming season, similar game, perhaps maybe even a more heated game with old Kansas on the schedule. How big does that game loom on Missouri's schedule? Because, week 2 at home, you don't put the whole season on one game, but that feels like a crossroads given all the transition for Missouri, particularly on the offensive side of the football.
Yeah. Now, my hatred for Kansas goes back generations. My great-great-great-grandfather fought the Kansans back in the Civil War. And it's something that if you're from around the area, it means a lot. Now, it usually meant more on the basketball court than the football field, but like those last couple of iterations of the border war, which I will still call it that, in Kansas City in the late aughts and the early 10s were some of the best rivalry football that you were ever going to see, especially from Missouri and Kansas. Again, it's sad that they didn't want to keep the rivalry going. They kind of, held their breath and said, you left. And like, I understand that argument, fully disagree and think they're stupid, but I understand where they're coming from. So we have played them in basketball. And of course, basketball is Kansas's sport. Like that's their thing. They invented it. They rule. Cool, whatever. So, Missouri gets smoked a couple times, beat them this year, but like it's the football field, man. Like this is where Missouri is supposed to shine. This is where Missouri is supposed to win a lot. Or at least since 2000, it's supposed to be the case. And Missouri closed that rivalry on a very good winning streak. And Kansas just kept getting worse. And Missouri faltered and got better and got mediocre. But like we missed a lot of terrible Kansas football that we could have just beat the snot out of them and could have used another win in a couple of seasons. And now they come back and now they're competent. Like, please give me a break. So I know Jalen Daniels is coming back. I know that they still have their head coach, and like it's a rebuilding team. They lost their OC. They weren't the same last year, even though they got better. But this is one of those cornerstones of college football. I don't care where you are. People know what the border war was, however you want to put it. And I know, especially, connoisseurs of the sport have missed having Missouri and Kansas play. I know I'm one of them. I'm sure if you corner a Kansan in the dark, he'll whisper, yes, I miss it too. So it's really nice to have that comeback. They're coming to Columbia. I'm going to be there without a doubt. You can't lose this one, Eli. And like, he's really good in rivalry games. He's really good at getting guys to focus. I just want to say no pressure, but you can't lose this one. Like, you gotta win it. You gotta win the trophy. You gotta remind Kansas that they're not as good as Missouri in football. And then, from wherever we'll take it from there, but it's going to be a huge game. Like you said, second week, people are still going to be bought in. I can't wait.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really wanted to ask you this too, Nate, that, because this is how I see it. And I'm just kind of curious if Missouri fans see it this way as well, that they are in a unique window right now with NIL, and they have mastered that with and credit Drink and the local politicians there for this is all legal, changing state laws to give them an advantage that maybe some others have. And I think a lot of these SEC coaches, when they're complaining about we need standardized laws, I think they're looking squarely at Missouri, not just Missouri, but they're kind of at the forefront of that. They won 21 games over the last 2 years. Does it at all feel like this is a perfect storm right now with the schedule? Again, schedules can be deceiving. Some on paper they look, manageable, and sometimes it turns out they're really difficult. But does it feel like Missouri's in a really advantageous spot that may not be there for years to come? Like to me, it feels like we gotta take advantage of this while it's here.
100%. Yeah, 100%. It's once Eli Drinkwitz set the clock of states getting interfering with NIL laws, once that precedent was set, that started a timer. And it certainly set off a timer in my head, and it should have set off a timer with everybody else, because I'm like, these are football coaches. They're not going to let some kind of advantage go by unaddressed or unimpeded. And either there's going to be some lawsuit against it, or there's going to be additional laws passed like it. And I know Florida's on board. I know Georgia's getting on board. I know a lot of states are starting to do the same thing. But it did feel a little bit like a borrowed time advantage, where Missouri was sitting in the sweet spot where they were the first. And so they were able to take advantage of this sort of thing. I guess if anybody doesn't know, it's high schoolers being able to capitalize on NIL before they even step on foot on campus, to lock down the borders and keep local kids local, right? And so it just felt like that was going to be borrowed time. Like, you have this advantage for X amount of time, and it's not infinite. So yeah, I do feel like Mizzou has done well in this sort of aspect. They've kept a lot of local guys home. They haven't kept them all, on the roster forever, but it gives them an opportunity. It gives them an advantage to say, look, you can look at us a little longer. And you pair that with Luther Burden, the 5-star who picked Missouri when they were, a middling SEC team when he committed. You talk about all the advantages of Missouri capitalizing on the transfer portal and bringing in 4-stars, blue chips who aren't seeing the field, but hey, you could do it at Mizzou. And there was this sweet spot where Eli Drinkwitz really rode it to not only just good high school recruiting, but excellent transfer portal classes too. And so I don't know how much longer this advantage is going to last, or if the advantage no longer exists, if it even matters. But it does feel like we're on borrowed time. And then you mentioned the schedule as well. I mean, yes, heading into the at this time last year, we looked at Missouri's schedule and said, they're going to lose 2 games. And, it doesn't even matter. Like, you could probably start Drew Pine and they'll only lose 2 games. But to your point, I mean, the resume rank was 17th. The strength of schedule rank was 31st. Obviously there are other SEC teams that are better. But yeah, now you go to this year and the SEC just flipped it. So now what we had last year is the same, except home is away and away is home. Obviously we got Kansas on there. We have, a different FCS bag game, but we still got UMass. Louisiana comes in, which is not the Louisiana of Billy Napier's brain. So South Carolina was better. Arkansas was better. Oklahoma better be better. Texas A&M was, a playoff contender for half the year. Like, it wasn't as easy as we thought it was. But you're looking at this like Alabama. I don't know what they're doing. They're not saving Alabama, and you get them at home.
Right.
Texas A&M, you're going to be focused on them this year, so you better be at home. Mississippi State, I think, is still going to be a mess. You want to get back at South Carolina. Usually you can win that at home, but like Auburn, Vanderbilt with Diego Pavia coming back, Oklahoma, rivalry game on the road, same for Arkansas on a rivalry spot. Those aren't easy. So, I mean, you would like to think that there's still kind of that same advantage that they had this year. But looking at the roster and looking at the flipped schedule and knowing what we know about the teams now, it's like, might not be as easy as we thought. But Eli Drinkwitz does need to take advantage of this opportunity while he still has it.
Mm-hmm. And do you buy into the narrative that he created this offseason where we want production over potential? Or do you think that was a little, we lost, you referenced it, we signed a lot of guys, and then a lot of them left. So, I mean, maybe that was just a spin job, but maybe there's truth to it.
It could be. I'm still trying to acclimate to the NIL era, the NIL and portal era. In my mind, I am always going to think 4-year build, recruit high school, build them up. And I think that's still true in the portal era. I do think that the teams that recruit high school better are going to be in the playoff more often. I think the transfer portal is great for plugging holes, but it's not great for building a team. Simply put, I mean, transfer guys take a year to acclimate to where they are. We've seen that at Mizzou. We saw that at Colorado. We've seen that pretty much, with a few exceptions, pretty much everywhere. A transfer player is kind of like a freshman. You got to acclimate to what's going on at your new school and at your new program. So if you want to build through the portal and if you want to plug holes and just assume like, hey, we made a run last year at the playoff and we didn't get it, historically, that would have been another 2 years until you get there. But now it's, okay, well, we're just going to go buy the best free agents we can, and we're going to do it again. And I'm like, I feel like there needs to be a downtime there. Like, I feel like we got to catch our breath. And from a practical standpoint, I'm like, do you still have the NIL money to build a roster that's going to compete every single year? Or do you need to save up a little bit? I think one of the strengths that Mizzou has is that their NIL pool is not funded by just one or two people. This is not some oligarchy filling it. It's kind of a Clemson IPTE situation where it's a lot of little donations. So the positive of that is that you're not going to wear out your donation base as fast as if it was just one person. The downside is that if you have these little guys donating every single year and they're not getting exactly what they wanted, you could have a lot of that go away. You're trying to talk to 20, 50 people to keep donating instead of just one. That can be tougher too. So part of me is like, just take a break. Like we can have a 7-8 win year without going as hard as we can into the portal or into NIL spending. I'm okay with that, but that's not really the modern game, especially with an expanded playoff. It's like you have to do this every single year. Mm-hmm. So it's very odd. I don't know what to think when they keep pushing and pushing. It's like, we're making another one. We're making another run. It feels like very professional sports, and I'm still college pilled thinking that you need to build. So it's different. Mm-hmm. It's different. I think I'm okay with the production over potential, but I was really sad to see some of that potential go. I like to see it build up and come in, but at the same time, they also portaled in some potential too, which was something that was different from the last couple of portal rounds that they had. So, what do I know? I'm just sitting in my basement yapping about it, and they're the ones that have to build it, and I trust them at this point. They've earned it.
Yeah. Well, has Corey Batoon earned it? I wanted you to, how would you rank or rate his first year on the job? Because Blake Baker, I thought that was a pretty questionable hire for Missouri, but as it turns out, I thought he was excellent. But was he $2.5 million excellent? I don't think so. I don't. Highest paid assistant in college football last year. Mm-hmm. I didn't notice a huge drop off with Corey Batoon. What's your thoughts?
So it wasn't so much a drop off as far as quality goes. It was a change. It was a shift in mentality, which I did not anticipate, because when Drink made the hire of Batoon, one of the things he mentioned was a similar philosophy when it came to defense. And, other than scheme, which, 4-2-5, everyone runs that at this point, or at least some version of that. Other than that, it made it sound like he had this blitzing mentality, this aggression mentality that Blake Baker uses all the time, for better or for worse. He just meets adversity with aggression every single time. And it worked really well in 23. It worked really well in 22, frankly, too. So when Batoon comes in, you don't really see a drop off in the quality, the overall quality of the defense. What you see is a shift in what this defense does. So whereas Blake Baker would blitz you basically every single play, and he would create a lot of havoc plays and give up a ton of big plays, this Missouri defense really did not blitz all that much, especially once the linebackers were lost. You had a lost defensive end in fall camp. You lost a couple backers right in the middle of the season with Khalil Jacobs, who was a really havoc-y focused linebacker. You just saw Mizzou kind of play more of a shell and try to create pass rush with four guys and not really successfully do that all that much outside of Johnny Walker. So what that meant is that the havoc plays went way down. Like way down from what you saw in 23 and 22. However, you saw a reduction in big plays too. Not that they didn't happen. We saw them happen. We saw them happen. Mostly passing the ball to over our safety. But overall, you didn't see these big runs get taken off. You didn't see these screen passes go for a billion yards when you thought you had it for a loss of 3. They were more sound tackling. It was more zone oriented. You didn't see as many blitzes. And it still got the same product. It was still a top 20 defense. So I'm impressed. I don't know if that's what he wants to do. Obviously, losing like 2 big blitzing pieces kind of changes the way that you want to play. And they brought in, the Georgia transfer. Of course, that goes with Darius Smith, who's another Georgia transfer. We got Khalil Jacobs back. He's a blitzing linebacker. We got Tristan Newsom back. He's a havoc kind of linebacker. Like, I think you have the pieces to be aggressive if you want. So if we don't see it again, then that tells me Batoon's just going to play this kind of style, which is fine. Just play good defense. But I was relieved that you didn't really see a huge quality drop off. I was just surprised that it was like a completely different style of defense, which still worked, but was just different than what we had seen for the past 2 years.
And then perhaps more interestingly, the other coordinator, Kirby Moore, man, I thought a year ago today, he was in the conversation for maybe the best coordinator. Maybe that's a bit too bold, but one of the best coordinators in the SEC, and arguably you could say saved Drink's job, with all the success they had 2 years ago. And not that he was like awful this year, but I was very disappointed, as I'm sure you were, with the overall offense. How do you evaluate Kirby Moore going into year 3? And particularly with all the changes on the offensive side of the football, how confident are you that he's going to field a really good offense?
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. The jury is still out. He comes in 2023, and he takes an offense that cannot pass the ball, cannot create explosive plays, cannot open, can kind of run, but like that's about it. And he turns it into this tremendous running, grinding machine that, oh, by the way, we're going to throw it 20 yards over your head reliably. And you sit there and you go, where was this ever in the Drinkwitz era? And so you go, he's found his guy. It's going to elevate the program. He's going to go take a head coaching job or like an NFL job in a couple of years. We're going to be in a great situation. And then 24 happens and you return your quarterback, every receiver who had a target and a catch and a pass and a touchdown, and it gets worse. It gets worse. Demonstrably worse. The explosive plays disappear. Now, I know you don't have Cody Schrader to reliably run the ball, and I know you're missing the left side of your offensive line, but like, it was so odd. And they missed Marquise Johnson, who's their fastest receiver, for about half the year. So you didn't have your reliable deep threat, but he didn't really, he had like maybe 40 routes run in 23. It wasn't a big deal. It just, the quarterback and the receivers got worse. And obviously the defenses that Missouri played, they're on scholarship too. They want to learn to stop you. The defensive coordinator is getting paid to stop you. So maybe they figured something out, but it was a massive regression. And if Missouri couldn't run the ball, they also couldn't pass the ball, and they could not create explosive plays, and they're very easy to shut down. So I don't know what to say, Kirby. Like, you had the same pieces. If people figured it out, You got to figure something out. He was one of the worst opening script offensive coordinators I've ever seen in my life. Every single first drive Missouri went out was like a 3 or 4 and out. Just absolutely nothing. Now he got pretty good at like changing it as the game went on. He could adapt pretty well, but like it was just a turd every first possession that Missouri had of a game. So I don't know. I don't know. He's got a brand new quarterback. He's missing all those fun receivers. He's bringing in new running backs, new offensive line. I don't know, Kirby. Like you got to show me what you can do here. I think year 3 is going to be the determining factor of, is this a good hire long term, where he gets poached away, or is this a bad hire where he gets fired in a couple of years and we got to find somebody else? I really don't know what the answer is. I know he knows how to coach football. I know he knows how to call plays. I just have to see it, and I have to see it to be better. And I don't know if this is the year for that. So it's going to be really curious to see what happens.
Yeah, and it's even more perplexing because like the first, I would say 2/3 of the season, the offense was abysmal is probably a strong word, but just not the same. And then the final third, they found something. But now I know there's injuries and many factors, but that just kind of adds to why that was so perplexing. How about I really wanted to ask you about Sam Horn. Do you think he's a factor at all? I mean, we've been waiting for this guy, and unfortunately, he's just been so injured. And quite frankly, even if he wasn't injured, I mean, they had Brady Cook, so we wouldn't know much about him, I wouldn't think, at this point in time. But do you think he's a real factor to potentially start any games this fall for Missouri?
My heart says yes. My brain says no. That's because every year Brady Cook would be the starter with a bullet. And then he left and they went out and got Beau Pribula. Kind of makes me feel like he's not ready. And if your listeners don't know, Sam Horn's also a pitcher for the Missouri baseball team. And I think at this point he's thrown more pitches than he's had snaps on the football field. It's just, I don't know. I'd like to see it. I'd really like to see it. There's also the 4-star Matt Zollers out of Pennsylvania. He's going to be on the team now. He's not a factor to play, but he's there. But between Drew Pine and Sam Horn and Beau, like, I don't know. Even last year, he was not going to play, which is why they brought in Drew Pine. So you've got a 4th-year starter or a 4th-year quarterback who has, thrown a handful of passes. I'm sure he knows the playbook, but like we just haven't seen it. I would love for him to be a factor, mostly for the narrative around Drinkwitz. And I don't know how much of this is a national narrative. I can tell you from the Missouri fan base, we are keenly aware that Eli Drinkwitz has never started a quarterback that he recruited from high school. Now, he would probably counter with, well, I started Brady Cook for 3 seasons. My counter to the counter would be Brady Cook committed to Mizzou with Barry Odom. In fact, Brady Cook would have committed to Mizzou if the head coach was a monkey in a vest. Okay. That dude wanted to play quarterback at Missouri. It did not matter who was sitting in the head chair. So I'm not counting that one, Eli. But between, any of the, Jabari Johnson, Tyler Macon, Sam Horn, any of the guys that he's recruited from high school, Aiden Glover, none of those quarterbacks have ever started a game. Now, again, you had Brady Cook, but also you just brought in the guy from Penn State. So it could potentially be another year of not a Drinkwitz high school recruited quarterback playing. And there's just this little thing hanging over his head of like, you're an offensive guy. Where's the quarterback? And I don't know if he's ever going to fight it or if he's ever going to start a guy that he recruited from high school, but I like Sam Horn a lot. He's a great story. I would love to see him have an impact. I haven't seen it. And until I do, I'm going to just assume that it's not going to be the case.
Apologies in advance, Nate. I always butcher this. You maybe you can teach me. Pribula?
Brother, I have no idea. Worst case scenario, I just phoneticalized it the whole way. So I said Pribula.
Okay. Well, I call him Beau. What are your thoughts? Would you ever? And who knows if this is accurate? You would know better than I. But it was widely reported by I think it was On 3 that Beau got $1.5 million to come to Missouri. Did you ever? First of all, did you ever think in our lifetime we'd be sitting here saying Missouri paid $1.5 million for a player? And again, this is all legal. So I'm not saying anything wrong with it. Mm-hmm. First of all, could you ever imagine that? And more importantly, do you think he's worth that?
No, to your first question, and I have no idea to your second. I mean, I talked about Sam Horn. This is a guy who is, heading into his 4th year and he's thrown 8 passes. Beau's a little bit better than that, but he's entering his 4th year and he's thrown 56 passes. Like, okay, what do we actually know about that? He was cursed with showing up at Happy Valley the same time as Drew Aller did. And he's played. They had special packages for him. He closed out the Wisconsin game. I think it was what it was last year. Is he worth $1.5 million? Like, if he wins games, yes, absolutely he is. If he doesn't, then no, he's not going to be worth it. But I just don't know what he can be anything, man. He might even be Brady Cook again. I mean, they're basically the same build. I think Beau's about like 2 pounds lighter, alleged weight 2 pounds lighter, but about that's the same height. Last year he had a 74% completion rate, 9 yards adjusted net yards per average. He ran 37 times for 248 yards, like 4 touchdowns. Like that's Brady Cook. That right there. We've seen that before. Now, does he do that here? I don't know. He doesn't have a tight end like number 44 that he had last year. We have Brett Norfleet, who's great, but who's been injured. It's a different style of offense. Obviously, Andy Koltanecki, a Kansas guy, was really creative in how he used his pieces, and he's coming to an offense that's not very creative. Kirby Moore is good at like scheming, but he's not good at getting creative and putting guys into spots. So I really don't know. He's got a lot of tools around him that he can utilize, some fun pieces that they're bringing in. But if this is just another Brady Cook who, is mobile and has got a decent arm and is just experienced and can take a hit, sure. It all comes down to, though, like, does the Missouri performance drop off? At this point, we know an Eli Drinkwitz team wants to slow it down, play like 8 possessions, keep it tight until the last 2 minutes, and have your field goal kicker win the game. And if Beau can complete that formula, if he's the guy that can keep that going, then yeah, he's absolutely worth it. Missouri wins another 9-10 games, great. If he cannot do that, then no, we need to find somebody else. And I don't know what the answer would be at that point.
Yeah. We have my good friend Stephen Lassen. He's senior editor over at Athlon Sports. And we had him on earlier this week, and he said, in his opinion, Drew Aller's the best quarterback in the Big Ten next year. So if I'm a Missouri fan, I spin that and just say, well, if that's accurate, then for all we know, Beau he could have been the second best, but he still couldn't get on the field because number 1 was in front of him. So yeah, I think he's one of the biggest mysteries in the SEC this upcoming season. And aside from the quarterback position, what is your biggest question mark for this Missouri football team entering spring practice?
Can I just say the entire offense? Because that's kind of where we're at, man. I mean, new quarterback. Your top 2 running backs are gone. You have 3 of your offensive linemen gone. You have all of your receivers who had more than 40 targets gone. You have a tight end returning who was injured all year. You have your backup, your 3rd down running back who had 20 carries. You have your center back, and you have one of your guards back, and everything else is just something new. So I don't know. I think that's the biggest concern. Like, where does everybody fit? I don't even. I always write down the numbers. I don't even know the numbers off the top of my head right now. I can't even identify guys. There's so many of them. There's a lot of fun, interesting pieces. Obviously, bringing Kevin Coleman in from Mississippi State. Yes, absolutely. Missouri product, St. Louis guy. Maybe he and Luther didn't get along. Maybe that's why he's here now instead of before. But he is an excellent slot receiver. I think he can do incredibly well as just like a bridge Luther Burden in the slot. He's actually better than Burden on a per catch basis over the past 3 years. So that's very exciting. You bring in Ahmad Hardy from Louisiana Monroe, who's just this ball of knives who just gets hit all the time and just keeps going. He's very Cody Schrader-esque in how he runs, actually. Like his success rate isn't super great, but his yards before contact were terrible. But after contact, he'd go an extra 3 yards. It was the Hardy show. Like, he had more rushes than Monroe quarterbacks had passing attempts, counting sacks. Like, it was just give it to him left, give it to him right, and he still got over 1,000 yards. He was still averaging over 5 yards per carry. Like, What does he do when he doesn't have to do everything? Really curious about that. Jamal Roberts, our third down back. He's in his third year. Very excited to see what he can do. Most running backs do better in year 2 of actually playing in a Drinkwitz era. That would be Jamal Roberts. It could also be Tavares Jones, former blue chipper who hasn't seen a lot of time. We've got Marquise Johnson will hopefully be healthy. He's a speedy receiver. Josh Manning's another blue chipper, very intriguing prospect. Your backups are still around in the receiving core. Like, we have guys, we've seen little bits and pieces. We just haven't seen the whole thing work together. And now you're starting basically all over again with an offensive line that needs guys who know each other and is basically starting a brand new 5. That's risky. That's risky in the SEC. That's risky against Kansas. So I just don't know what this is going to look like, and I don't know what Kirby Moore is going to make out of it, because he returned a bunch of guys, and it was a stinky pie that we had last year. So that is my biggest question. How does this all work? Where does everybody slot? And is it going to be any good? At the end of the day, Drinkwitz wants his defense to put his offense in a position to win it late. So they don't need to be asked a lot, but they need to be functional. And I don't know if it's going to be functional.
Hey, apologies for recycling. This is like our favorite off-season topic, apparently, but we've been talking about it for about 4 or 5, maybe 6 years. But I think the SEC is finally going to go to 9 conference games. Let's assume they do, and let's assume they go with the most popular model, where each SEC team would play 3 permanent opponents annually, and then rotate the other 6. That's the logical solution. Doesn't mean they're going to do that. But let's just assume all that happens. Who are the 3 that Missouri should play annually, in your opinion?
Boy, it's really easy to say Oklahoma, Texas, Texas A&M, just because there's a longer history there. That would not be for me. You could say, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Arkansas, because those have been some really good games, or at least Tennessee and Missouri fans are no fans of each other. Columbia, the Battle of Columbia's, that's always a good game, regardless of records. And, Arkansas is our force-fed rival. So you could say that. I would like to blend the 2. I want Oklahoma every year. That's a no-brainer. And if you tell me, well, we made this big trophy, there's like a whole corporate partner, okay, we'll keep Arkansas. That's fun. We snipe at each other anyway, so that's fun. And then I hate it, but give me South Carolina. That game is always good. And it's a nutso place to go, to Columbia, South Carolina, with the rooster going and Sandstorm going. Like, very intimidating place. They show up every single time, but like, those are good games, man. And I tend to like games where my team's going to win, but I will say, for entertainment value and a little bit of extra zhuzh with your unofficial rival in South Carolina, Missouri, I'll take that one too. So I would say Oklahoma, South Carolina, Arkansas would be my 3.
All right, Nate, really appreciate all your time. A last question for you. Do you believe that Eli Drinkwitz will lead Missouri to the college football playoff during his tenure there? And obviously we don't know how long that's going to be, but could be as long as you want in this hypothetical.
100%. Yeah. I do believe that. Number 1, I think he's going to be given the time to do so. Number 2, I believe the playoff is going to expand and force feed 4 SEC teams into the thing, which, regardless of my politics on that, kind of feel like Missouri is going to be one of the top 4 teams in the SEC at some point in the next 5 years. So yes, I think Drinkwitz will get them in. How he does there, not a clue. But it was really weird because, in previous years when Missouri teams have entered with expectations, they haven't hit him. And then we go, got to wait another 8 years for this thing to happen. This year I was like, well, we didn't get it. Guess we'll try again next year when this thing expands again. So like, it's Eli Drinkwitz has us feeling that. And if you're a Missouri fan of my age, you would be shocked at how comfortable you feel about even a down year where you only win 10 games and you don't make it to the playoff, and you still feel good. That's a good place to be. And Eli Drinkwitz has worked magic on me.
All right, Nate, before you go, can you tell my audience how to follow you and how to find all your stuff at Rock M?
Absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter at Nate G. Edwards. You go to rockmnation.com. In the offseason, I put out an article every Tuesday. It's going to be mostly Mizzou centric, but you can learn something about football. You can also listen to our podcast Before the Box Score. That is with me and the tastefully named Nathan Hurst. Again, we do every 2 weeks in the offseason, but 2 shows once we get into the fall. And again, it's Mizzou centric, but God, we're just interesting guys, about football, and just join us, won't you? It's a lot of fun. If you mess around with Blue Sky, we're over there too. But you can always go to rockmnation.com. You can click on the masthead. You can read anything that we talk about. And I'd start my opponent previews. My goodness, in a couple weeks. So we are getting there fast, and we'd appreciate to have you over here, and hope you enjoy the reading.
All right. Thank you so much, Nate. I'll cut it right there.